Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going somewhere deeply personal. You know, mental illness is usually something we look at from the outside, right? Through clinical definitions or maybe through the worried eyes of family members. But what does it actually feel like from the inside? Why is it that the person caught right in the middle of the storm is usually the absolute last one to realize it's raining? We're going to unpack the raw, emotional journey of a major manic and psychotic episode. And to really understand it, we're stepping directly into the shoes of the author Andrew Turtle. We'll explore exactly how the brain can perfectly mask its own illness, leaving you totally unaware that you even need help. Okay, picture this. Imagine waking up one day and coming to this terrifying realization. In 2023, I destroyed my life in a matter of weeks. That is the shocking reality we're diving into today. I really want you to feel the weight of this from a first-person perspective. I was making decisions that were actively ruining my relationships, my finances, my entire future. And yet, while I was literally dismantling the foundation of my life, I had absolutely zero idea that I was unwell. Actually, scratch that. It's worse. I didn't just feel okay. I felt like I was completely on top of the world.
So let's start with Section 1, the unseen wreckage.
It is absolutely crucial to understand the sheer speed of what happened here. We're not talking about a slow, years-long decline. The consequences of this episode played out in just a few short weeks. Like in that tiny window of time, I blew through more than $3,000 without even batting an eye. My judgment wasn't just, a little off. It was profoundly impaired. But here's the kicker. It didn't feel impaired at all. To me, it felt like I was making these incredibly important, super necessary investments. But that massive financial hit, yeah, that was just the beginning of the fallout. Because it wasn't just the money. The true human cost was so much worse. I lost a romantic relationship. I lost 2 deeply significant friendships. I severely damaged my relationship with my parents, and I had this massive falling out with my brother. My actions were systematically burning down the most cherished relationships in my life. But remember the core theme we're looking at today? While all this tragedy was unfolding right in front of me, I remained completely oblivious to the destruction I was causing. In my mind, I wasn't destroying my life. I genuinely thought I was finally starting to live it.
Which brings us to Section 2, an intoxicating high. To really understand why someone wouldn't notice they're actively carrying their life apart, you have to look at the euphoria. I mean, I felt more alive than I'd ever felt before in my entire life. Energetic, confident, incredibly creative, hyper-productive, social, just wildly optimistic. It's this intense, intoxicating rush of excitement and pure possibility just surging through your veins. And that right there is the trap. Those incredible feelings, they don't signal to your brain that something is wrong. They feel like the exact opposite. They feel like an absolute breakthrough.
So how does this manic logic actually operate? Well, it's basically a step-by-step psychological trap. Step 1, you experience that incredible euphoria, and you start believing you finally unlocked your ultimate human potential. You're writing poems or essays that to you seem completely brilliant. Then, step 2, you feel this boundless, undeniable urgency. Step 3, everything around you suddenly starts feeling deeply connected and intensely meaningful, like everything is a sign. And finally, step 4, because this internal logic feels so flawless, you completely lose touch with reality, all while being absolutely convinced that you're seeing the world more clearly than anyone else ever has. As I put it, I did not have months or years to complete my goals. I felt I needed to act immediately. There was this overwhelming, almost crushing urgency behind every single thing I did. I was so frustrated, honestly, because everyone else around me seemed to be moving in slow motion. Like, why didn't anyone else get that time was of the essence? And as this episode kept intensifying, my ability to hit the brakes, to critically evaluate my own rapid-fire thoughts, it just vanished completely.
Moving on to Section 3, a distorted reality.
Now, this is where that intoxicating energy morphs into something much darker, and the brain literally rewrites the rules of existence. Delusions are not experienced as possibilities or fun theories to ponder. They are experienced as hard reality. When I believed I was literally living out the 7 days of creation, it wasn't just some creative idea I was casually kicking around. It was the absolute concrete framework I was using to interpret every single thing happening around me. Random coincidences, highly significant. Everyday events, totally purposeful. Because the belief felt so fundamentally real, there was absolutely no reason for me to even question it. And obviously, this led to a terrifying disconnect with the people I loved. My mother kept telling me, "You are unwell. You are seeing reality differently." Okay, well, that was her reality. but from where I was standing, my version of the world felt totally normal and crystal clear. I just figured other people simply couldn't understand me. And really, how do you bridge a gap like that when two people are effectively living in two completely different universes? Well, trying to bridge that gap can lead to some incredibly dangerous actions. Like, I jumped out of a moving car. Just let that sink in for a second. I didn't do it because I wanted to hurt myself. No way. I did it as a desperate, very real attempt to convince my mother that we were seeing the exact same reality. I know it sounds crazy now, but within the twisted framework of my delusion, those reckless actions felt like completely logical, necessary ways to communicate.
That brings us to Section 4, Flickers of Insight.
Now, you might be wondering, didn't any part of me know something was wrong? Well, insight isn't just a simple all or nothing switch. It was this agonizing, confusing internal tug of war. On one hand, yeah, I had moments of awareness. I recognized I wasn't sleeping. I knew my thoughts were racing a mile a minute. I could see that the people around me were really worried. But I entirely missed the severity of the situation. I missed the real-world consequences of my actions, and I completely missed the fact that my beliefs had detached from reality. I was constantly bouncing back and forth between these fleeting little moments of insight, and then boom, back into absolute, unshakable conviction in my delusions.
So, we are left with this haunting question. Why didn't I know? Well, the cruel underlying irony of bipolar disorder and schizoaffective disorder is this. The very state that desperately requires treatment actively destroys your ability to recognize that you even need treatment. The illness literally disguises itself as enlightenment.
And finally, Section 5, the inevitable crash.
Because eventually, the manic episode ends. It always does. That euphoric energy drains away, and it's replaced by the heavy, quiet onset of a prolonged depression. During the mania, my actions felt logical, exciting, empowering. But when my mood finally stabilized, well, then it became possible, and mandatory really, to look back with a clear head. I had to look at the risky behavior, the impulsive decisions, the shattered relationships, the delusional thinking. Suddenly, all that stuff that felt so right just a few weeks ago, now it just appeared bizarre, deeply frightening, and profoundly embarrassing.
So the crucial point of the healing process, and honestly one of the absolute hardest parts of recovery, is learning to live with this massive contradiction. I had to accept that something that felt so incredibly creative and exciting and empowering could simultaneously be so unimaginably destructive. Acknowledging that the highest peak you've ever felt in your entire life was actually just a symptom of an illness, man, that is a monumental, painful hurdle when you're learning to live with this disorder. I want to leave you with a final provocative thought today. Have you ever felt more alive than ever before? Perfectly in tune, confident, just totally unstoppable? Now, can you imagine being told that that exact feeling is actually a destructive disease? It is a terrifying, intoxicating trap. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive into the lived reality of mania has brought you a clearer, much more empathetic understanding of a truly complex condition. Catch you next time.